All right, everybody, welcome to the Ocean Lab's special live broadcast straight from the super remote waters of San Ignacio Lagoon, Mexico. Today, we'll embark on a journey to discover the awe-inspiring world of one of the ocean's most majestic creatures, the gray whale. Special thanks to Mike Lever and the entire Nautilus team for making these programs possible. I'm Kylie, your moderator today on this exciting adventure, coming to you live from the pristine coast of Baja California. Each year, this incredible lagoon serves as a sanctuary to the magnificent gray whales during their annual 12,000-mile round-trip migration between the Arctic and Mexico. And here in the protected waters of the San Ignacio Lagoon, they find refuge to breed, to give birth, and to nurture their young. We're going to meet up with some pretty incredible researchers today who are actually out on the lagoon as we speak to learn even more about gray whale biology, ecology, and learn what it looks like to be a marine biologist. If we're lucky, we might even get to see a few whales. Just a reminder, we are coming to you live from a very remote part of Mexico. So if the video looks a little bit lower quality than your favorite TV shows, that's why. We welcome your questions. So if you want during the show, just submit them using the Q&A icon down at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can. For now, I'll turn it over to our host, Dr. Chris Lowe of CSU Long Beach, and our resident marine mammal expert, Dr. Gwen Goodmanlowe. How's the lagoon today, guys?
Oh, spectacular. It's awesome. So the sun just came out. There's whales all around us. So I'm Dr. Chris Lowe. I'm a professor of marine biology, and I'm the director of the Shark Lab at Cal State Long Beach. I study sharks, but I'm here to learn about whales. Here we have Dr. Gwen Goodmanlowe. She's a true whale expert. And we also have another expert on board. This is Scarlett. She's one of our naturalists. She's teaching us a lot about whales. And we have our Captain Adrian, who works here, knows these waters really well, and he's helping us get close to the whales. So the cool thing about this whole Baja Peninsula, it was formed about 5 to 10 million years ago as the Pacific Plate moved north, and the North Pacific Plate or North Atlantic Plate started to move underneath. So as these plates moved, it created this long peninsula with the Sea of Cortez on one side, and then we are on the west side of the peninsula along a series of lagoons. There are 3 major lagoons that the gray whales use. And I'm here to learn more about whales. So, Dr. G, why do the gray whales come down here and use these lagoons?
So the geography of the coastline is such that this is right here, we're in San Ignacio Lagoon, and it's a really protected area for the gray whales to come and give birth and also to mate. So it's really shallow, relatively shallow compared to the Pacific Ocean. And warm. The water is nice and warm, and there's higher salinity. So that is a great way and a great place for the moms that are pregnant to come down here and give birth to their babies, and then for the males to come in and mate with the females that are not giving birth and having babies. So they stay down here for about 3 months out of the year, depending on what time they arrive and what time they leave. But it's about 3 months, and it's just a really great protected area. It's like having a nursery. It's like, bringing your kids to a nursery. The whales are bringing their babies to the nursery. So it's just a perfect place to do that. And we're so lucky because we get to come here and visit them and enjoy.
Oh,
right there.
A spy hop already.
It's not a spy hop.
So these are mammals.
These are mammals.
And what makes them a mammal?
So there are 5 things that makes an animal a mammal. One is that they have fur or hair at some time of their life. Another thing is that they feed their young with mammary glands. Another thing is that they have live births. So they don't lay eggs. They actually give birth to live young. They have what we call internal reproduction. And the 5th one has left me. Oh, right. They breathe air. Thank you. They have lungs and they breathe air. So they are mammals just like us, and they have to breathe air, which is really critical, a critical thing to remember. Spy hopping right behind us.
So you're calling this spy hopping, but what is spy hopping? Oh, we got a whale right by the back of the boat. Oh, check it out right there.
Right there. Look at the whale right by the boat.
Oh, wow.
Did you see the blowholes? Did you see it take a breath? Those are the blowholes, which is the same thing as our nostrils, but their nostrils are on the back of their head, which allows them to take a breath when they come up to the surface much more efficiently than if they had nostrils on the tip of their nose.
So
And
how do
there's
they not-
actually a name for that.
How do they not choke?
They close their blowholes before they go back down.
Oh, so they close their nostrils.
yeah, they close their nostrils, and we can't do that, but they can do that. So they open them up, take a breath, release the carbon dioxide, just like when we breathe out, and then they close them and they grab a breath right after they release the carbon dioxide, grab some oxygen, and then dive back down.
But these whales can hold their breath a long time.
They can hold their breath for up to about 20 minutes. So yeah,
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Wow.
It's amazing.
I think my record's like a minute and a half. So when they blow, there she blows. We hear that all the time. You see this big puff of water in the air, but it's not just water, right?
It's not just water. So they're actually, it's called exhalation, and they're exhaling carbon dioxide, a little bit of water vapor. And then when that it's so forceful, when it pops out of their blowholes, they're getting some oil and mucus that's on their skin, and bacteria too. And because baleen whales have two blowholes openings, like we have two nostrils, they have two blowhole openings. It's very characteristic for those blow come up like this, and they call it a heart-shaped blow. So it actually looks like a heart when the blow comes out.
So that's just their nice way of saying hello.
Yeah, so it's seen all around.
Right there, look at
There's
spy
spy hopping.
Oh, so what is spy up again?
So spy hop is when the whale puts its head out of the water. Sometimes the eye will come up too. Oh, right there, right there, right there. That is amazing. Wow.
They're checking us out.
They're
maybe.
checking this out, and they're putting their eye above or just below the water, and they're looking around to see what's going on. So, who's there? Well, who's on that boat? Are they friendly, or are there other whales around? Are they looking at the coastline? So they're looking at all kinds of things.
So can their eye work in air and underwater?
Their eye can work in air and underwater, and they actually have a lens that's similar to ours, where they can constrict their pupil like us when it's sunny. But they also have special muscles called ciliary muscles that will actually change the shape of the eye lens to allow them to focus in air and underwater. So have you ever tried to open your eyes in a pool
Yes.
and it looks all blurry and you can't see? We don't have those ciliary muscles. You can't focus very well underwater unless you have a mask covering your eye. But they can see both under the water and in air. So
Okay.
they're really specialized.
I want a whale eye.
Yeah.
I want to be able to see underwater and in air. Okay, so these whales.
The other thing about their eye is that it's really big, because remember, under the water, there's not a lot of light, right? And so they need to have a real big eye so that they can see when it's essentially dusk for them all the time. So their eye is really big. And yesterday, we got to see a whale come right by under the boat, and its eye was about that big, just looking at us. Oh, another spy hop. Really checking us out.
So obviously they've got a big eye.
And
They
big
can
eye.
see above and below water. Can they smell?
They don't have a very good sense of smell,
Okay.
because unlike us, their nostrils are really for getting air and getting rid of the carbon dioxide, and they have to keep those closed when they're underwater. So they're so fast on the surface taking a breath that they don't have time to really smell. So they don't have a good sense of smell.
But they have ears.
They have ears embedded in their head.
Okay.
So yes,
So there's no openings.
there's no openings.
And then
they're
what are they hearing?
sensing vibrations in the water.
Okay.
So any time something makes a sound, there's a sound wave, and they can sense that the little ear bones embedded in their head vibrate, and they can hear those sounds.
But they can talk to each other as well,
And
right?
they can communicate as well. Yes, so
Okay.
they make sounds. So humpback whales are really known for their whale songs. Gray whales are not known for their songs as much, but they do make whistles, grunts. They make a knocking sound like that, and you can hear those. Then
Uh-huh.
they can hear them themselves. So that's how they communicate. Yeah.
So moms can start talking to their calves.
Yes.
So is there any idea whether they can understand each other? Like, I recognize your voice.
They probably can. Yeah.
Okay, so they have their own little dialects. their own
Yes,
little accents.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that becomes really important because these animals migrate
Right.
from here all the way to Alaska, right?
All the way to Alaska. So a round trip, it's about 5,000 to 7,000 miles, or one way, sorry. And round trip, it's between 12 and 14,000 miles every year. So they're doing a very long migration, and they go up there to feed. So in the summer, they go to Alaska because it's warmer and they're feeding up there. They're putting on lots of blubber, lots of fat. And then it's time, now Alaska it's cold like in September, right? So they start to head back down here around November, December, and they come down here where the water's nice and warm. So they do that every year. Most of the whales do that every year, but some don't migrate all the way.
So other than a few occasional snacks here, they're basically only eating in Alaska.
For the most part, yes. Yeah.
What are they eating and how do these things? Because they don't have teeth, right?
Oh man, it's such a good question. So they're feeding on things in the mud. So unlike other baleen whales that feed in the water column, gray whales actually feed on things that are in the sediment. And so they're feeding on things like amphipods, which are tiny little crustacean, like crab-like things. They feed on tube worms. They feed on krill. And they basically suck the mud out of the bottom. Whoa!
Big spy hop.
They suck the mud out of the bottom and then they expel the water. There's another one. They expel the water out of their mouths. And then that food gets stuck on the inside of the mouth parts, which is called baleen. And then they take their tongue and they scrape the inside of the baleen off with their tongue and they swallow that. And one thing I want to point out, so when they're spy hopping, you probably saw that they have these two lines down their throat. And these are, they're like pleats. And other baleen whales, like humpback whales, if you've ever seen a picture of those, they have lots of pleats. And when they're feeding those, they're getting gallons and gallons and gallons of water. And those pleats are used to expand the throat because they have to pull in so much water. So they have, I don't know, like 20 pleats. And their whole throat expands. These whales, you probably saw just the two lines. So because they're feeding off the bottom, they're not bringing in huge amounts of water.
Right here, it's coming to the boat. It's coming to the boat.
So they don't
Here we
need a
go.
lot of those pleats underneath. So they usually have between 2 and 5 pleats underneath their.
So Gwen, blue whales are the big gulpers, right?
Oh, yeah.
But these are more, Gwen's gonna try to
I'm gonna try to pet the
Gwen
whale.
wants to pet
I
this
wanna
one.
Pet the whale.
Oh, here she comes, or he, or it.
He or
You
she.
can't tell if it's a male or female, huh?
Not unless we can see the underside or it's during the courtship period. So, it went down pretty deep. Yeah.
So why do they come to the boats? They almost seem like they're attracted to the boats.
Yeah. So they're mammals, right? They're very, very curious and they're very intelligent. So they're checking us out. They want to see, what's going on, see who's on the boat. And they've learned over time that we're not a danger. So because we don't whale anymore and we're just here to watch them and observe, they seem to be fine with, coming to the boat, figuring out what's going on. Oh, another spy hop. Yeah, they're probably looking at each other.
Yeah. So because this is mating season,
Mating season.
we've got males and females together. This is like the big date area where everybody's setting up dates.
And the thing is that two males will, there's another one right there, another spy hop. Oh, so amazing.
There's so many whales.
So usually you'll see 3 together because the males are vying for dominance. They want to try to get the female and they're kind of fighting with each other and doing things together that will, ensure that one of the biggest one is the one that's going to win. And so typically you'll see 3 whales at the same time, 2 males and a female. And the males are, they're interacting with each other. And then whoever the spy up, and another spy up, another spy up. So exciting.
Yeah.
And then whoever wins gets to mate with the female, and the subordinate male will actually help them mate because remember, they're air breathers, so they have to stay at the surface when they're mating, which is actually relatively fast, but they do need to be supported at the surface. And then when they give birth, it's usually 2 females. So an auntie female, sometimes, not related though, not related to ants.
Oh, here we go. Right here. Look.
See the blowhole really well.
So, but what are those things on its back?
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. So they have a really unique coloration. So you can see these like yellow spots and white spots. Those yellow spots are barnacles. Oh, right there, coming right up. Can you see it?
Underneath the boat.
Right underneath the boat. Hello.
Man, it's massive.
So the yellow spots are barnacles, and The species of barnacle that lives on the gray whale is species specific. So what that means is that it only lives on the gray whale, and they pop on in these Baja lagoons. So the barnacle life cycle is such that there's a pelagic, or they're in the plankton for part of their life, and they're little tiny floaty things. And then what happens is they get to be a certain age, the barnacle gets to be a certain age, and they attach themselves to the whale. And they live on the whale for their entire life, and not really sure how long they live, but they can fall off or get brushed off, but they will attach themselves to the whale. That's the yellow spots. And then the little white things, whitish things around them are these things called whale lice, which aren't like the lice that, you know, would be in your hair.
Oh,
if you
good,
had
because
whale
I don't have any hair.
hair. They're a different type of lice. They're kind of, they're related to very tiny
Okay, let's get.
crabs. And they, oh, yeah. They only see the whale and the bird. Right. Yeah. And they have these populations their whole lives. And when they're first born, they don't have any barnacles. So the babies are real no barnacles, and then the barnacles get bigger and bigger, and the whale lice get on, and the whale lice can be transferred by touch. So here's coming. Oh, nice. So they can be transferred from whale to whale just by touch, because they move, but the barnacles don't. Oh, yes. So cool. And so the barnacles get to be about an inch and a half long when the barnacles are adults. So you can start to tell how old a whale is just by the size of the barnacle. They're really checking it out. They're very interested in some courtship today.
So the babies are clean, and they don't have barnacles yet, and they get barnacles pretty fast though, because the lagoon here is loaded with whales that already have barnacles.
That's right. Yeah.
So the barnacles are spawning here too.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, another one coming up.
All right, so
Okay, let's talk about the baleen. So
yeah.
really get to finish talking about that.
So what is baleen?
So baleen is a type of it's a plate. They have these plates that are next to each other, and they're kind of fringed, and they're made of a protein called keratin, which is similar to our fingernails. And it's really cool because there's different sizes of the sieve of the baleen depending on what the animal eats. So gray whale has whitish baleens, which we might get to see.
Yep.
And other whales have different colors and different thicknesses depending on what they eat. So theirs is relatively it's not super fine like some other ones, but it's pretty fine because they're feeding on real small things.
Yeah.
Well,
I just got bubbled.
and the baleen only comes down from the upper jaw. It's never on the lower jaw. And a cool thing is that they can turn their tongues kind of inside out to get rid of the water. And then again, they use their tongue in order to scrape that food off and swallow it.
Oh, so they're actually taking a big mouthful, pushing out all the water, and then using their tongue to lick it off the inside of the belly.
Yeah, kind of like peanut butter.
You get a bunch of peanut butter in your mouth.
Yep, kind of like peanut butter, and they can't get it off their tongue.
Wow, coming over this side, over this side.
So, yeah, so that's how they feed.
Oh, okay,
It's really different from other
so
whales.
they must have to eat a lot of food.
They have to eat a lot of food, yeah.
So
Thousands of pounds of food, but they mainly do that up in Alaska.
and then they pack on lots of weight. Now, when I just put my hand in the water, it feels kind of cool.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
how do they stay?
Oh, oh, nice.
Oh, pushing the boat.
They're getting exuberant.
Yeah.
Whales have blubber.
Yep.
Which is similar to fat, but it's a little bit different. It's a thicker layer, and it has more veins and arteries going through it. And also, it's actually really tightly affixed to the underlying muscle layer. So really different, but that blubber is really insulated. So it keeps them really, really warm. So it's like having on 2, 3, 4 winter jackets on top of their body. That's how they stay warm.
So now
Yeah.
our body temperatures are 98.6, and we're considered warm-bodied animals, right? Because we're mammals.
That's right.
So, but if I was to stay in this water for an hour, I would
You
freeze.
would, and that's because you don't have a blubber layer.
Exactly. So what's their body temperature?
So their body temperature is about the same as ours. It's about between 98 and 100. And they have that blubber layer in order to stay warm. Because remember, unlike seals and sea lions, they never come out of the water. It's not like going to a SeaWorld show. They're always in the water 100% of the time. So
Okay.
they really have to have that thick blubber layer to stay warm.
So when they're up in Alaska and they're eating and eating and eating all summer long, and they built up this big blubber layer, and then they turn around, and
So
then they
nice.
migrate back down here.
Right.
By the time they get here, a lot of that blubber has been
Yeah.
used because that's like a lunchbox that they've been feeding on, right?
Yes. So they actually lose about a third of their body weight in blubber. The moms do when they're feeding the calves, they lose about a third of the weight of their blubber. But they do lose weight during the year too. So
But that's good because
it's like a big diet.
by the time they get down here, the water's warmer, so,
Yes,
so
yeah.
they don't need as much
Right. They don't eat
insulation.
as much, but yes.
But by the time they head back,
It's
Yep.
time. Yeah.
yeah,
Time
it's
to
even
build it back
less
up.
lunchbox.
Right. Right. Yes.
Okay, so that mom is using some of her blubber to feed her babies, right?
He is.
And she does that via milk.
That's right.
So how good is that milk?
That milk is the best milk in the world. It's about 60% fat, whereas regular milk is what, 4% fat, right? Because low fat is 2%.
Right.
So think about the milk that you drink at home, 4% fat versus 60% fat. It is among the most richly fatted milk in the world.
So how much milk will a mom give a baby a day?
The mom will give a baby about between 60 and 90 gallons per day.
Gallons.
Gallons, yes.
Wow.
So it's crazy. And the baby can gain 9 pounds an hour.
An hour.
An hour. Oh, I don't know much of the locals. Yep.
Oh, here you go.
Here we go.
You finally
Gonna get to
kiss a
touch
whale.
with. Oh,
Oh,
the
look at
blubber.
that. Get right by the blowhole. Get right by the blowhole.
Yeah, right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
right there. Oh,
Thank you. I got blowhole kissed by a whale.
you got blowhole kissed by a whale.
Beautiful.
Wow, look at that. And see the eye? The eye is right
Yes.
above the mouth, right?
Yeah. And the blubber is soft. Like it doesn't look soft, but it's so soft to touch. It's so really amazing.
But those lice, don't they help? The little lice are a parasite, right?
Well, they're not a true parasite because true parasites
And harm.
they harm the
Yeah.
host. They actually do harm the host. So these aren't really considered true parasites because they actually help the host. So
How do they do that?
So the lice, what they do is they'll pick off dead skin and they'll kind of clean up any wounds they may have. So they actually really help the host. They help the gray whale. And that's what the lice feed on. The barnacles feed on plankton as the whale is moving through the water. The barnacles will stick their feeding structure out and feed on plankton that's moving through the water. So yeah.
So they're both hitchhikers, basically.
Both hitchhikers.
But,
Yeah.
but they're hitchhikers that get benefits more than just a ride.
Right. Exactly.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so a baby is gaining, did you say 9 pounds an hour?
9 pounds an hour.
So how many pounds do they gain a day?
That's about what did we say about
60 to 100 pounds a day, right?
to 100 pounds a day.
Okay,
And
and
when
then how
they're-
big are they when they born?
Yeah, when they're born, they're about 15 feet and about 2,000 pounds.
That's a big baby.
Yeah,
And
that's a big baby.
But she only gives birth to one.
She only gives birth to one, and it's not every year. So it's usually about every 2, maybe 3 years that she gives birth because she's got to, get back in condition, right?
Hey, right.
So that's a hard life. So, coming back up, yeah. But let's see if we can see those
Oh.
barnacles and the light
See
really
if you can
close.
see them.
Oh, you can see the barnacles out feeding. Did you see that?
Oh, did you see it?
Did you see that? See the green part?
Oh, yeah, the little
Barnacles,
arm. That's the
the-
tail.
No, it's not the tail. Those are the feet, the feeding feet. When they come out,
Yeah,
they retract, but when they're in the water, I don't know if you could see that, but the barnacles were actually out feeding on plankton when the whale was underwater. That's spectacular. Yeah. And
Okay, so
there's another.
where did gray whales evolve from? What did they evolve from?
So gray whales evolved from something that was kind of like hippopotamus way back in the day, about 400 million years ago.
And they spent a lot of time in water, but could also go on land.
Well, the first ones just started going into the water. So they still had four legs, like a dog, four legs. And they started coming into the water. And then they got adaptations like over time, their limbs became more fin-like. And then when the whales started to evolve, they actually lost their hind legs. They just have tiny little bones by their hips now. Their tail that was like a dog tail became like this wide, flipper for swimming. And then about 34 million years ago, the whales evolved, but they were tiny. They were like a little, I don't know, like alligator size, maybe not even that big. And then about 4.5 million years ago, when one of the ice ages happened,
Because the water got cold,
the
right?
water got cold, we had a lot more plankton, so a lot more food for whales, and that's when the whales got to be really big like this, right? And the largest whale on Earth is the blue whale, which is about 100 feet long and 450,000 pounds, something like that. That's the largest whale on Earth. Gray whales are not quite that big. They get to be about 50 feet and 90,000 pounds.
But there's an advantage of being big if you're warm bodied and you live in a cold water.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So you-
yeah.
In addition to blubber, you've got a big body mass to keep the heat, right? That's why big people get really hot
Right.
and small people get cold.
Right. So there is like me. So yeah, there's an advantage to being large. And gray whales they're not definitely not the smallest, but they're definitely not the biggest. So yeah, but
They have a heck of a migration, right? I mean,
the
they
longest
cover
migration in the world.
the longest in the world.
Of the marine mammals, yes, not of birds. There's longer ones. The Arctic tern migrates from pole to pole every year. I think that's 22,000 mile migration. But as far as mammals go, they definitely have the longest migration.
Okay,
of
so
any marine mammal.
here's a question. So you heard the old saying, water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink.
Oh,
So how do they get fresh water?
oh, that's a great question. So marine mammals have a problem in that they're in the water, the salt water all the time.
We can't
So
drink salt water.
we
That's
can't drink salt water, and they don't go get some fresh water. So marine mammals are highly adapted to get their fresh water from what they eat. So it's called metabolic water.
okay.
And whenever they eat something, there's some fresh water in there, and they're able to take that in and serve it. And they have really highly adapted kidneys that allow them to filter the salt out and allow them to keep that fresh water. So that's how they get their fresh water. So they don't ever have to worry about having a water bottle with them or anything like that.
I want to be around.
Yeah,
I'd have great eyes. I could drink salt water.
true.
So many benefits.
You could be a vegetarian.
Exactly. Maybe not. Okay, so I got to pet one.
You
The
did.
skin feels very smooth and soft, but I don't see any hair. I thought mammals had to have hair.
Yeah, well, and the marine mammals, and some of the marine mammals, it's only in the embryonic stage. So that's only when they're in their moms they have a hair. But actually, the gray whales, if you look at their face, it looks kind of dimpled,
Uh-huh.
and they have one stiff hair in each one of those dimples. And what that does is it senses the environment, so it can sense the water currents, and things like that. And so they still actually do have some
They do have
hair.
hair.
They have one
So,
stiff hair in each one of their dimples on their head.
That was like me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, maybe.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So
a little bit more.
one of the things I notice is like if my eyes are closed, I'm in a dark room and I feel the wind blow across my hand, it's really the hairs that are
That's right.
sensing that. So you're saying that their
Yes.
little whiskers are
Yes.
doing the same thing
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah, same with the dogs and cats, right? That's
Right.
why they have the whiskers. They know how wide they can, go through a doorway or whatever, they can sense things with the whiskers. It's very similar to that. Yeah.
So these animals are basically in these lagoons
Mhm.
all winter long. This is warmer certainly than Alaska in the winter. They're basically getting big babies. They've come down here, they've mated, and then they're going to turn around. They're going to head all the way back up north.
That's right.
So when they make that migration, how do we know? How did researchers figure out where they go?
That's they followed them. Well, so originally back in the day, it was probably whalers that did that. But then people got really curious and they started seeing them going up the coast. So they could see, oh, look, there's something along the coast. Oh, that's a gray whale. And they would just follow and see where they went.
Right here, right here. Oh, look at the barnacles.
Look at the barnacles. And the whale lice. You see all the little pink things?
Get right by the blowhole, then. Get right by the blowhole.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. They are so curious, aren't they?
I know, it's
Just
amazing.
so intelligent and so curious. I mean, why should they do this, right?
Exactly.
Why would they
So,
want to do this?
And that's kind of that's the next thing.
Right.
So let's say 150 years ago in these lagoons, would they have been doing this?
No, because 150 years ago, right here, Dan, tail. 150 years ago, they were being relentlessly hunted. So they were actually called devilfish because they would attack the harpooners that were trying to kill them. And so, they saw a whaling boat or a boat, they would hightail it out of there. They were not interested in being so friendly.
But why do we hunt whales? Why did they hunt whales back then?
Right. So they hunted whales because way back in the day, before any of us were born, I think maybe you were.
Hey, now, let's be nice.
Way back in the day, we didn't have electricity. So they used the whale oil. So the blubber, they would boil the blubber down and for oil, and they would use whale oil to light lamps and to heat houses. And baleen whales, that baleen that's coming off their mouths, that was similar to a plastic kind of material, if you want to think of it that way.
Really flexible.
It's somewhat flexible. And so they would use that, not like plastic today, but to put the stays, the ribs in umbrellas. They would use it. Women wore corsets to kind of make their waist thinner. And so they would use them in corsets because they were somewhat flexible. So they used whalebone. Other whales, like the sperm whale, they used that oil because it was very high quality oil. They would use it to make excuse me, I'm getting choked up. Candles and margarine and things like that.
So these whales and all whales got hunted to the verge of extinction,
Right.
Like 150 years ago.
Yeah.
But they're coming back. You can't even look in a direction and not see a whale here.
Right.
So what does that tell us?
Well, that tells us that the laws are working. So we had the Marine Mammal Protection Act. The gray whales were actually protected well before that. So they were protected as early as 1949. The Marine Mammal Protection Act didn't start until 1972. Endangered Species Act 1973, I believe, or maybe that's backwards. But they've really been protected for so long. And so other than some subsistence whaling in Alaska, it is illegal to whale. And in fact, with the Marine Mammal Protection Act, you're not allowed to go in most places other than here within 150 feet of a marine mammal. You need to stay back unless they approach you. So, and that's what we're doing. So we're not chasing the whales in any way. We see a whale, the boat stops, and then the whale.
And they just come to us?
They come to us. So
it's
very different.
So it sounds like that conservation worked, but we have another problem that they're dealing with, right? So the planet's getting warmer.
Yes.
Global climate change, because we've put all these fossil fuels into the atmosphere, increasing the amount of CO2, and the planet's getting warmer.
Yes.
So how's that going to affect the whales?
Well, it's actually having a direct negative effect on the whales because their food, the food of their food is declining with the ice caps melting.
What does that have to do with?
The really interesting thing is that the ice, the food of their food lives underneath the sea ice, and then it falls to the floor, and then their food eats that food, and then the gray whales eat that. So if there's no sea ice, you would think, well, there's more plankton, there's more sun, but it doesn't work that way for their food. So if there's no sea ice, their food, the food of their food is not going to be, it doesn't have a home. It doesn't have a place to live under the sea ice. There's no sea ice. So the whole thing is connected and they actually end up starving. When they do that, they end up feeding in other places. And unfortunately, they end up eating things that they shouldn't be eating, like plastic and things like that. So, and the other problem is that the more population we have on Earth, the more fishing we're doing, right? Because we need to feed people. So they're also getting entangled with fishing nets. They're getting in the way of large container ships.
Yep.
There's more ships. So think of Amazon. I hate to say Amazon, but think of these big companies that are sending things from all over the world. The way they do that is they put them on container ships. So there's more and more ships and there's more and more interaction with these whales. And when they hit them, they
Okay,
die.
but they're filter feeders, which means they're filtering out the water. And now everything is made of plastic.
Right.
And a lot of that plastic gets into the ocean.
Yes.
What does that do?
Well, that kills them because they feel full, somewhat full from the plastic, and they just keep getting more and more plastic, but you can't digest plastic and they can't throw it up. Whales don't really have the ability to throw things up. And so the plastic just fills up their stomach, but they still starve because they're not getting the nutrition they need. So it's like the worst kind of junk food you could ever eat. It would be like eating a thing of chips, but instead of eating the chips, you're eating the package around the chips. You can't go out, you can't, but it doesn't really do much for you.
So even though we've protected them and we prevent hunting from happening and whales have come back, now we have a new problem. And that new problem is the other impacts that we have on the planet, right? And it's not just this population here, it's global.
Yeah.
So we need to think about things that the next generation is going to do to help fix this problem.
Right.
So one of the things we always tell our students is, look, you have to be part of the solution because
Right.
we created a big mess for you and now you have to help us clean it up.
That's right.
It's not really fair, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the way things work.
So all those single-use plastics, we go to, the big container stores like Costco and things like that, all those single-use plastics, it's just, those plastics are made of a substance, actually mylar, and you can't recycle those. Mylar balloons that float up, people release them and they end up in the ocean and animals eat them. All of those things, you have to, we think about those all the time. And it's hard to navigate because that's what our world is like, but all the single-use plastic bottles, a lot of those actually don't get recycled. Even if you put them in the recycling bin, they don't get recycled. And, so all those things end up either in a landfill or in the ocean. And things like these wonderful whales, eat them.
Have to eat it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we have some questions. So Kylie, do we have any questions?
We have quite a few questions.
Awesome.
Let's start with do barnacles help with the whale's health at all?
Oh,
They do not help with the whale's health. They don't seem to harm them at all. There's been studies that have looked at them to see, like, do they slow the whale down? Do they hurt the whale? And we don't think that they hurt the whale at all, but they don't really help them. The lice do, the whale lice do, but not.
any other, Kylie?
Sorry, guys, you dropped out for a sec.
Oh,
All right, we got a bunch more questions. Let's see. Do whales sleep?
Yes, whales do sleep. They have to sleep just like we do, but they don't have like an 8-hour period of really being zombie. Because they are living in the water and they're breathing air, they actually have to remain alert at all times. So they've done studies on dolphins and they've shown that half the brain is asleep and the other half is awake, and that switches back and forth the size of the brain. So they think that whales are doing the same thing as dolphins since they're so closely related. So it's more like resting periods with the brain, is half the brain asleep and the other half not.
so that blubber layer probably helps them float up a little bit.
Helps them float
They
up,
can-
but their bones are relatively heavy, so they will sink if they are not
Okay.
thinking about
So
it.
they do have to think, okay, I gotta come up and take a breath.
Yeah.
That question.
Over there.
Any others, Kylie?
Yeah, let's do a couple of the questions that were sent in before. We have Jamal, he's 14 from Orlando. And he wants to know, what do whales talk about when they talk to each other?
What do whales talk about? I don't think we really know the answer to that question, but we do know that they communicate with each other, especially moms and calves, because they're little babies that are being born, and so the moms have to tell the calves, hey, stay away from there. That's dangerous, or that's okay. Things like that. I don't think they do a lot of vocal communication when they're mating. I haven't really read about that, but they do communicate, but we don't really know what they're saying.
So along those lines, maybe the moms are talking to the calves and saying, you know what, when we make our migration north, we got to be careful about predators.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
what could possibly eat something this big?
Yeah, so orcas or killer whales are really the only natural predator other than humans on gray whales. Oh, right
There you
there.
go.
Nice, beautiful. So they do, they will get especially the babies will get killed by the killer whales. And that's part of that's part of the
That's part of
natural
life.
part of life, right? It's, hard to watch sometimes, but it is definitely part of life because the killer whales have to eat too. So,
But that's probably part of the important learning process that the mom and calf are
right.
sharing
Yeah.
is how to not get
Exactly.
eaten
Yeah.
on your migration. And once they learn that, I'm sure that information gets passed on
Yeah,
from generation to generation. So, I mean, this is really, kind of an amazing system. There's another question here from DJ Harley Quinn, who's 8 from Charlotte. And DJ wants to know, do whales have feelings?
Well, that's a great question, and we think they do. And that's based on some studies, again, mainly on dolphins, where they found that some dolphin species, if the mom uses a calf or reason, the mom's that calf for several days, and it will try to buoy the calf up to the surface of its bed. And sometimes when they're moving, the whole pod of dolphins has to kind of slow down and stay with that mom. So we do think they breathe. We don't know if they have feelings like love, but they definitely have fear because all animals have, the feeling of fear. So we definitely know they have feelings. I don't know sadness for sure, grieving. But other than that, it's very hard to measure that. So we're unsure.
And of course, they have very big brains. As
Very big
mammals
brains.
go, humans' brains are relatively small.
Right. But because we can't communicate with them, we
don't
don't really know, right? So kind of like with dogs, we have learned the dog language. If you don't have dogs, you don't know the dog language, but dogs wag their tails, but they also bare their teeth. So over time, we've learned what those things are. But with whales, since they're in the water, it's kind of hard to figure out.
So Scarlett, speaking of language, you've been here for how long studying the whales?
3 seasons.
3 seasons.
Here in San Ignacio.
And you're learning a little bit about whale language because you help teach people about it. What do you learn?
Here in San Ignacio, the whales come here, as you said, guys, for nurturing and for mating. So basically, they are quite like humans. So they have a lot of things to do, like take naps, like eat, take care of like babies. So it's really, really important to be patient when we do whale watching, and also to give them sometimes a space because they also need some space.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are very lovely, and gray whales, they are very some of them they can be very curious as the ones that we had here around us, and that's a gift they gave us. Share those moments with them.
So do they have different personalities?
I will say yes, for sure. Look, for example, here with the whales, the grays, we realize that we have some introverts, some extroverts, and of those extroverts, not all the time they feel social. Sometimes they want a little bit of space, but yeah, they are just like us.
So what's your favorite thing that you've learned when you've been here?
There's so many things, but the thing that I like the most is like to get to know some of these individuals, because as you said, guys, they have certain marks, so we can recognize some of them, and some of them they have strong personalities. So sometimes we see the mothers and babies since they are very little, that they hang out here in San Ignacio for 3 months, and we see them growing up and see them like go away. So it's really nice to get to know some of these Persian cows.
So you can recognize some of them just by their works.
Yes, and also the captains. So we also sometimes we give them names.
Oh, you do? What's your favorite whale that you know by name?
The last one was called El Loco. This one was a whale of the past season. And this whale, every time that approached the boat, for some reason, we don't know why, but he was opening the mouth.
Really?
We could see, yeah, we could see like the baleen plates and the smell.
Yeah. So they're not good baleen brushers.
No. But it was nice, and this was that particular whale.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would somebody have to do to be a naturalist like you on one of these boats? What would they have to learn?
You have to have the passion, the curiosity, and also it helps if you can study some like marine biology, so like oceanography
Yeah.
or something related with the environment. But especially if you are curious and enthusiast of the ocean, of the conservation, you have a lot of big opportunities.
So you get to work with lots of people that come out here and you get to teach them about the whales. What is the most important thing you want them to come away with from this experience?
Well, here with whale watching, I think it's important to know that not only gray whales, but the whales in general, they are very important for ecosystems. So it's important that we do good practices when we do whale watching and to get to know them closer and realize what are the important things. Like if they are sleeping or they are feeding, we are not going to interrupt them. We are going to give them some space. So that's important to know.
So, and of course, here in Mexico, you really value these whales. You have done a lot to protect and take care of them. So, what do you think is the most important thing that people should know? These whales, they're going all the way from Alaska through Canada, through the US, and then they come down here. This is a special place for them.
This is a special place for whales in Mexico. We have 14 types of baleen whales in Mexico. From those 14, we have 8. And of those 8, we have them in Baja. So this is like a sweet spot for the whales. And most of them, they are migratory and they come here fasting. So that's why it's important to know all these details and also to respect the environmental law, when is the season, go with good operators of tourism. And yes, that's it.
So the other thing that impresses me is so much about these lagoons is that this is a biosphere. So Mexico has protected it, but we have people that live here and make their living off fishing. So like Captain Adrian might be fishing during the non-whale season, but during the whale season is taking people out for this experience. So that's a great way to show how people are learning to share the environment.
Yes.
We have to take something from it.
Yeah.
But we also are getting people an opportunity to see and meet these animals that they may never get to see back home.
Yes.
So a lot of people live here at San Ignacio.
So yes, in San Ignacio, there's around here in the lagoon, around 1,000 people. And most of our captains, they are fishermen, as you said, in off season. And also, for example, one of the things that I love of San Ignacio is that it's like a small community. So all of them, they are family related. So Adrian has some cousins or uncles that they are also captains, or their wives, they work also in our camp. So they help us too with the operation. So it's a good activity, also like alternative for fishermen to have more income.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's great.
So Kylie, do we have any last questions?
We do have a couple questions. The people want to know more about becoming a whale researcher, first of all. One really quick question. Are you guys afraid that the whales are going to knock the boat over?
So
We're
we're gonna
What's right?
Are we afraid that the whales are going to knock the boat over?
No, they know. Depends how we do the activity. But if we are just not moving, giving them space, if they approach, they will approach. If not, but they are very smart, and they know how strong they are. So far, the interactions that we have had, they know the distances, and they know they are actually very gentle how they approach the boats.
So then how do you become a whale researcher?
Well, that's an interesting question. So it depends really what you want to do. So if you want to be the one that is deciding what you're going to research, you need to go to school probably for marine biology for an undergraduate, then get a master's and or a PhD, and then try to get a job as a professor, or with a government agency, and therefore you can do research. If you want to be a naturalist, we have a lot of our undergraduate marine biology majors that graduate and they start getting experience while they're an undergraduate at college. They start getting experience on local whale watch boats, and then they work their way up to become naturalists. So kind of depends on where in the scheme of things you want to do will depend on, how much education you have.
And I think the key is because, we train lots of students Learning from books is one thing, but there's nothing better
Right.
than being out here and seeing, right?
And you need to have a passion because a lot of people, they see it on TV, and
Looks very glamorous.
and it looks glamorous, and then the reality comes in where you're staying up all night and you're in the rain and the cold, and they think, oh yeah, this might not be for me after all.
And I
But
think it's important
Yeah.
that if they are curious, they can give it a try to volunteer.
yes,
Help
volunteer,
me out, yeah.
definitely.
And just get out of school and
Yeah.
try to summer to
Yeah.
summer in the museum or with somewhere.
Yep.
And try.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
essential, actually.
We've had a lot of students that have said, I only want to do field work, and then they volunteer, usually in the shark lab. They volunteer and they have to stay up all night, and then they think, I think I want to do lab work. They don't want to be outside anymore, so. Yeah.
So
Any other questions?
any last questions, Kylie?
We have one last question. Susan is wondering, I believe you guys mentioned this in the beginning, talking about how the salt water and the salinity is really good, a good environment for the gray whales. And Susan wants to know, why is that?
That's a great question. So when you have saline water, it actually is more dense than fresh water. And so what that means is that you can float better. So for example, if you've ever tried to float in a pool versus the ocean, for me, whenever I try to float in the pool, I sink. But when I float in the ocean, I'm on the surface of the water. And if you went to something like the Great Salt Lake, which is, I think it's 250 parts per million for salinity, parts per thousand, sorry. You can float really well. So the salinity helps the whales because it allowed, especially the moms and the babies. Remember, the babies, they don't really know how to do this yet, right? They have to really be at the surface and watch because they don't have the muscles, they don't have the strength to keep coming to the surface. So the salinity allows them to stay higher up in the water, and it's like a little cradle that keeps them cradled at the surface of the water. It's a great question.
So we want to thank everybody for joining us. We had a great time. Hopefully you got to see some whales. It was very cool. We want to thank Charlotte for our Scarlet for her help. We want to thank our captain Ian, for showing us the great whales. And we want to thank Stephen and Stephanie and Marty for joining us on this cool trip. And hopefully you will join us again for future programs.
We also want to thank Dan, who's our
Oh.
fearless leader.
Of course, the person you didn't get to see. Oh, hold on, Dan.
Together.
Hold on, Dan.
There we
Coming
go.
around.
Dan is our fearless leader who put this whole thing together. So, yes, thank you, Dan. Oof. Let's look at this.